Hi guys, Andy and Spoken Label, the amazing Roy Page. We have a special guest, unannounced as well. Who is a special guest?
Amanda.
Yeah, the wife. People are wondering, she loves Roy as much as I do. And I knew Amanda would not want to miss this part for the fantastic Roy Page. Straight over to Roy, he's got 4 pieces he's going to do with an amazing collection. Over to you, mate.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Okay, we've talked about Buffalo Bill being in Salford over the years, and this is the poem that I've put in my book called Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show. I went for a walk the other day down Kansas Avenue, just off Old Broadway, and I looked across at the docklands before me, where the new Salford Quays stands today. And I tried to imagine a time before that, when on that same land stood the old Manchester racetrack, where Buffalo Bill Cody brought his Wild West show to amaze the Salford people all those years ago. It was the winter of 1887 when the Wild West show tour came around. They set up their teepees and they circled their wagons by the cobblestone streets of the dirty old town. They built an arena inside the old track where the crowds packed in every day to watch sharpshooters, rough riders, and Indian braves as they put on their colourful display. They brought horses, mules, elk, and deer, and even some buffalo. And Custer's last stand at the Little Bighorn was always the finale of the show. One sad thing happened on that Northwest tour to a 6'7" Indian brave. The cold, damp winter wind took his life one day. Surrounded by the enemy was his name. Then Little Chief and Goodrobe had a baby girl, the first Sioux Indian born outside the USA. They named her Frances Victoria Alexander, with the Indian name over the sea. They had her baptized at St. Clement's, where locals came to see such a thrill. And all of the colourful show people arrived at the church, led on horseback by Buffalo Bill. Then before they left town on the very last night, Buffalo Bill got into a fight. He punched out a cabby who asked for his fare, then went off to bed without even a care. The magistrates fined him, but Bill had long gone. After 5 months in Salford, the show had moved on. Sadly, very little is known of this story today, but I wonder if she knew about her birthplace in Salford, that little Indian girl named Over the Sea. Yeah, that's a true story. From before they built the ship canal, before they built the docks, and there was a Manchester racetrack just on before the docks were built, and that's where they did it all them years ago. They brought Buffalo Bill brought his party over from America.
It's an astonishing story. It really is. It's very, like you correctly said in the first half, it's a often almost forgot about part of history. Had you heard of the story before, Amanda?
No, but I enjoyed the poem and I could imagine it as he was reading it.
It's incredible. It really is. It's the details as everything, Roy, sometimes, because you're such a good storyteller. And it's like
there's lots and lots of other add-on stories to it, and it's all in the archives. If anybody's interested, you can check it all out. Some of the relatives of the people that came over stayed over here.
Oh yeah.
Lived their lives in Salford and Manchester and Gorton and places like that. Yeah, wow. It's worth reading. It's worth reading.
Oh, yeah, so I'm going to have to definitely look into that. It was amazing, mate. Definitely so. Yeah, so Amanda said it right. It's a cracking poem. It really is Velter.
Yeah.
Okay, mate. We're on to poem number 2 now, aren't we?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read this one called Docks and Quays next. It's because if you ever get this book, or if you look on the front of the book, there's a little street on the front of the book, and looking down the street, you can see the Manchester Ship Canal, the docks on the front of the book. That's it there, that little street. And that's the street that I lived in when I was a little boy. And And so it's inspired me to write about the docks and the quays and the changes over the years. So this next poem is called Docks and Quays. When I was a kid growing up in old Salford town, our street was always empty, with no cars to be found. There were play streets for the children, playing kit can and rally vote, and 20-a-side football games. How times are different now. From the end of our street, you could see the docks and the Manchester Ship Canal, with ships bringing goods from around the world to buy and trade and sell. Thousands of men moved millions of tons of iron, stone, and earth, building bridges and locks and digging the docks. They all came for the work. When Queen Victoria cut the tape in 1894, she opened up a gateway and the world stepped through the door. For 60 years, the docks were booming, but slowly over time, ships got bigger, containers took over. There was a gradual decline. Well, my Uncle Jack worked on the docks, driving a rowbell and laying down plates. And for almost 20 years, he walked through those dock gates. When the docks were busy and work was aplenty, there was a sense of pride. And when the dock gates closed for the very last time, part of Salford died. Now today, 50 years on, it's quite a different scene. The dockers are gone, but in their place has risen Salford quays. They've saved the docks and fixed the locks and made the water clean. Yes, Salford can be proud again of what it has achieved. It's a place where people live and work, once again the place to be, with museums, theatre, a media city, and a home for the BBC. A water sports centre with swans swimming by, buildings of glass reaching up to the sky. And across the water, hear the roar of the crowd, lies the theatre of dreams. Sir Matt would be proud. And if my Uncle Jack was here today, I know he would be pleased to see the progress that's been made down on Salford quays. Yeah, so that's that one.
Tremendous, mate. Tremendous. I'm going to ask him, because you've been on Salford quays with me a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, a
So,
couple of times.
yeah, I to be honest with you, right, I don't know if you noticed, I actually grew up not far from there, actually, I did. And
Really?
back in, yeah, I was born just up the road from Old Trafford, basically. So,
All right.
lived
Okay.
on Stretford down that way for 40 odd years of my life. And I always remember my mate driving me up down there just after the quays started reopening up in the late 80s.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It
yeah,
was fun. Yeah, I remember I worked on the timber wagons down there, and I was about 17. I was a driver's mate on the timber wagons,
oh
and
yeah,
I remember going down to the docks with my driver and all the trucks, and getting in a queue, and then moving up towards the ship in the queue, and then I used to have to stand on the back of the truck, and they'd crane the timber out of the ship and onto the truck, and I had to land it. And it was like I think that was probably one of the last timber boats that came into Salford.
wow.
Yeah, so that's another memory. Yeah,
That'll be your next book, that one, definitely, then, mate. Won't it? That
yeah.
No, great stuff. Now, I thought it's a really good link, that, because obviously, going from your two pieces about Salford now, and I know your other two pieces you do for us are much more personal memories, I suppose, really, aren't they? So, the next
Yeah.
two, straight away, like I said. So, anyway, we'll let you move on, mate. So, over to you,
Okay.
piece number 3.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah. So this next one that's in the book is called Joe's First Car. And in my later working life, I drove a truck and I worked for the Automobile Association, picking people up that were broke down and taking them to the garage, with the cars. And a few years ago, I picked a guy up, an old chap like me, and he had an old vintage car. And he told me a story. We got chatting, and he was from Salford. In fact, he was born in the street next to mine, if you like, when I was a kid. And we got chatting and got loads of stuff in common. And he told me that he was quite dyslexic, actually, but he'd been encouraged to write a story about the first car that he'd ever bought. And he wrote it all down, all the information, and he showed it me. He gave me the information. And also, this chap, he worked as a DJ on hospital radio in Crumpsall and North Manchester. And so I wrote the poem Joe's First Car out of the information that he gave me, and I read it on his radio show a few years ago. So I'm going to read it out now. This is called Joe's First Car. He was so delighted with it when he got it. So it's called Joe's First Car. He passed his test, third time lucky, in 1962. 9 lessons in a minivan with Arthur's driving school. He worked and saved as hard as he could and called in every favour. Then off he went to buy a car, armed with Eric Taylor. Well, Eric Taylor was his mate, and he was an apprentice mechanic, so that's why he went with him. At Mount Pleasant Garage, there it stood, a Ford Anglia, black and sleek. So he struck a deal for 35 quid, plus 15 bob a week. He took it home to Frederick Street to show his mum and dad. And his mum said later she felt like the Queen while sitting in the back. He went to the local hardware store to buy silver tape and white gloss. And with Go Faster stripes and white wall tyres, he felt like Sterling Moss. Out to the Oasis Club on a Tuesday night with Morris, Eric and Colin, watching the pop bands of the day in his treasured passion wagon. Then once a week, when he'd been paid, without hesitation, he'd call and get his half a gallon from Estrie's petrol station. Times were different nowadays. We have more things by far, but Joe says they were happy days when he bought his first car. Yeah, he loved it. He loved that poem. He was so made up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, man? Has that got a really nice sense of nostalgia in it, that
Yeah.
piece? It really does, because you
Yeah.
can see the love in that piece straight away, Rowan. What a beautiful piece, mate. Absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
Wonder if you get anything else you want to it? No, she's been when people wonder, she's been very quiet and shy again tonight. What brilliant raw stuff, right? Okay. We're over to, as you always say, spoken label now. The big finale.
The big finale.
Yeah,
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, mate.
Okay, this one is the one that you mentioned earlier, about my Uncle Terry's American car. And just to imagine when we were little kiddies, me and my brother. My brother was always with me everywhere we went. Our kid, a little bit younger than me. We went everywhere. We did everything together. So he gets mentioned a lot in my poems. So yeah, this is about my Uncle Terry's American car back in the 60s. My Uncle Terry had an American car parked at the top of our street, black and shiny with white wall tyres, all chrome and black leather seats. There weren't many people had a car back then. Unforgettable, unaffordable to the average man. There were only 2 other cars in our street, a taxi and my dad's 3-wheel van. This car would not have looked out of place on the streets of San Francisco, instead of cruising down Regent Road or outside Wees bus depot. It seemed out of place, from a different world, something only seen on the telly. But there it was in that Salford street, and it belonged to our Uncle Terry. He asked me and our kid to guard it once from the rest of the kids in the street. And if you saw a dirty mark, you'd polish it off with some spit on the end of your sleeve. One day, he said he'd take us to Blackpool, but we'd have to get permission off our mum. So we ran down the street to ask her, and when we come out, he'd gone. So when I watch the old films from the 60s, it brings back a memory from afar, and I think of my Uncle Terry and his big black American car. Yeah, that's it. Good memory.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. Yeah. I thought it's just a great way again to finish the session off, Roy. What do you think, Amanda?
Yeah,
It does like.
I just love that line where he said he'd take you to Blackpool and he'd drop off.
It's funny because I spoke to his wife about 2 years ago, and he was in a nursing home, Uncle Terry, and I sent her the poem, and they laughed their heads off at that line, actually, because he was a bit of a torment like that, you know. Can you imagine?
I can see it.
Remembered it. We've had plenty of laughs about that.
Oh God, he would do. And the best bit is Roy. He probably didn't even realise what he'd caused at the time, did he? But just when he just did it, probably like as a
Probably just didn't care.
He just wanted to get rid of 2 kids, didn't it? 2 minors.
Yeah, I think so. Straight away with that, Roy.
Yeah.
Anyway, mate, that's it for today, guys and girls, for Spoken Label. I want to thank Roy again because we've had a vastly entertaining hour catch up with an old friend of ours today, Amanda, haven't we?
Yeah.
So it's been brilliant, mate. So Zed,
Thanks for
we'll have you back on when the next book's out. I promise you that now, mate.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Right, I want to thank Amanda as well. Thank you, Amanda, as well. So, right, everybody, that's it, like I said before. So, hang around, Roy, because I do need to chat to you off mic anyway, and Amanda will be staying here as well. But to conclude with, as I always say, as Don Callis over at AEW says, stay safe and stay over. We will see you all next time.